Welcome everyone to this explainer. Today we are stepping into a genuinely empowering space. We're going to act as your compassionate mentor, discovering these insights together and guiding you through a really vibrant syllabus designed specifically for facilitating BIPOC, LGBTQ2S+ mental health and recovery workshops. We'll be drawing directly from some incredibly powerful resources, like the Collaborative Learning College, Annalise Singh's Resilience Workbook, and Sonia Renee Taylor's Radical Teachings to structure a complete 7-part workshop series. And our ultimate goal here? It's to encourage deep healing through our shared lived experiences and to start viewing our personal intersectional identities not as deficits, but as profound, absolute sources of power. Let's dive in.
Okay, so here is our structural roadmap. We're going to be navigating 6 core pillars. First, the peer leader blueprint. Second, defining intersectional identities. Third, radical body sovereignty. Fourth, mapping ordinary magic. Fifth, community care and justice. And finally, number 6, ancestral futurism and thriving.
Starting off with Section 1, the Peer Leader Blueprint, where we focus on centering the self.
Right off the bat, there is a massive paradigm shift we need to make at the very foundation of our work. We're moving completely away from clinical gatekeeping and diagnostic intake models. Instead, just as the collaborative learning college model emphasizes, we are shifting toward a decolonial lens of collective strength. In our workshops, lived experience isn't just some secondary add-on, right? It is our primary expertise. We are not here to merely reduce symptoms. We are here to foster real self-determination and co-create safe spaces together.
But before we outline the 7 specific themes, let's talk about some crucial facilitation tools. Think of these as your cheat codes for making participants feel unconditionally safe. As peer leaders, you're absolutely going to navigate intense emotional discussions. When group energy runs high, you'll want to use concrete techniques like collective deep breathing to ground the room. And hey, remember to embrace moments of silence and stillness. This is sacred processing time. It's not awkward dead air. You'll also want to offer supportive affirmations by actively witnessing and mirroring back the shared stories, using inclusive language that honors the incredibly diverse cultural and spiritual backgrounds within our BIPOC queer community.
All right, let's look at Theme 1, Narrative Sovereignty. For this first 2-hour session, we completely toss out rigid clinical labels and replace them with a self-directed exploration of our evolving identity journeys. We simply ask, how do you define yourself? The main activity here is drafting a manifesto of self. As a facilitator, your job is to frame personal identity as the ultimate source of power and to provide warm, encouraging affirmations as participants read their manifestos aloud to the group. Because when we write our own manifestos, we officially reclaim our narrative.
Moving right along to Section 2, Defining Intersectional Identities, which is all about dismantling labels.
Drawing from Dr. Lourdes Dolores Fallon's incredible work on Black LGBTQ health, we asked these really essential, thought-provoking questions to the group. What does it mean to be a Black MSM or Two-Spirit? How do we actually identify the differences between other people's expectations versus our own personal truths? This is exactly how we open up conversations about fluid gender and sexual identities, challenging the master narrative that so often pathologizes our intersectional communities.
Visually bridging this idea of racial healing and queer resilience, we're really looking at a dual journey. So on the left, we have the racial healing wheel broken into these colorful pie slices that represent strategies like grieving, naming racism, and reclaiming your whole racial self. And then on the right, we have Singh's Queer and Transgender Resilience Workbook. As facilitators, we always want to provide clear text-based descriptions of visual tools like this so everyone can access the concepts. The major takeaway here? To truly thrive, our peers must externalize both racism and transnegativity at the same time.
And that brings us to Theme 2, where we dedicate a full 2-hour session to this exact topic. We focus heavily on identifying and dismantling common gender and sexual orientation labels, along with those pesky internalized negative messages. We use Singh's filling the cup exercise, literally naming the internalized oppression so we can take out the toxic stuff which magically makes room for our cherished truths. As a facilitator, your role here is to hold a deeply non-judgmental space for complex intersectional grief. And crucially, always guide a collective grounding exercise to safely close out what can be a very intense emotional discussion.
Now on to Section 3, Radical Body Sovereignty, Finding Peace with the Body.
To really anchor this next session, let's look at this incredibly powerful thought from Sonia Renee Taylor. She says, discrimination, social inequality, and injustice are manifestations of our inability to make peace with the body, our own and others. It just hits the nail on the head, right? She reminds us that unapologetic self-love isn't just a buzzword. It's an active, de-colonial practice.
Making peace with our bodies is a profound act of resistance against the world that constantly tells us we don't fit.
So what exactly are we resisting? We are actively dismantling body terrorism. This is Taylor's term for the systemic institutional forces and psychological messages that try to convince us our bodies are wrong, flawed, or somehow dangerous. In our groups, we completely flip the script. We shift the conversation to actively celebrating our forms. And yes, that absolutely includes neurodivergent and disabled bodies as sacred spaces of joy.
For our 2-hour session in Theme 3, the entire focus is moving from an adversarial relationship with our bodies into a state of peace. We use Taylor's unapologetic inquiry, which is a wonderful tactile activity made up of gentle somatic grounding questions. As the peer leader, you'll walk the group through these check-ins very carefully. It's so important to honor all physical boundaries here and to really validate any feelings of disconnect that might be stemming from dysphoria.
Section 4. Mapping Ordinary Magic. Exploring the Resilience Journey.
You know, we need to fundamentally reframe how we view resilience. Annalise Singh defines it as ordinary magic. I just love that phrase. It is not some rare, static trait reserved for a lucky few. It's actually a natural, everyday set of skills. The true beauty of ordinary magic is that it's an infinitely renewable resource within the BIPOQC community, and it literally multiplies the more we practice and share it with each other.
Here is our practical, step-by-step guide for participants to map out their own personal resilience journey. First, define your core truths. Second, pinpoint those external negative messages you've absorbed over the years. Third, actively reframe your inner critic to define and build your self-worth. Fourth, use that newfound worth to stand up for yourself in daily interactions. And finally, step 5, connect that interpersonal journey to interpersonal community support.
During Theme 4's 2-hour session, we utilize Singh's Resilience Wheel as a kind of personal compass. As a facilitator, you'll want to describe the wheel visually to the group, explaining that the very core is defining your LGBTQ self, and it's surrounded by spokes representing things like knowing your self-worth and standing up for yourself. We help our peers assess their internal and external strengths and figure out which spokes they want to develop next. And hey, be sure to model positive self-talk out loud for the group so they can see it in action.
Let's move to Section 5, Community Care and Justice, focusing on collective healing.
Ezra Dixon's work on transformative justice offers such a beautiful perspective here. It reminds us that the most powerful, life-changing healing doesn't happen in some ivory tower or a sterile clinical office. It happens in community. It happens sitting at the kitchen table, grounded entirely in mutual aid, friendship, and collective survival.
So Theme 5 dedicates 2 full hours to transformative justice. Here, the focus is all about fostering a profound sense of belonging and community care. We use collaborative storytelling as our main activity, just sharing the wild, sometimes incredibly messy stories of survival. Your job as a mentor is to shift the focus from isolating minority stress over to communal pride. We want to honor the humor, the hustle, and the absolute brilliance of our community's survival strategies with zero judgment.
Our Theme 6 session focuses heavily on building those vital interpersonal safety nets. The group activity here is resilience mapping. We're specifically identifying positive mirrors and gender angels, which are those deeply supportive allies and chosen family members who reflect our authentic selves right back to us. It's a great idea to facilitate paired discussions here so the quieter voices feel totally safe participating. And definitely share your own stories of chosen family to really model that vulnerability for the room.
And finally, Section 6, Ancestral Futurism and Thriving, our final vision.
Our 7th and final 2-hour session is just an exuberant, joyful celebration of thriving. We guide participants to vision their dharma, which involves writing a life narrative completely free from societal constraints. As the peer leader, your role is to channel the energy of a proud ancestor cheering them on, validate their biggest, most expansive dreams, and close out the entire workshop series by celebrating the living, breathing manifesto of health that you have all co-created together.
We're going to leave you with this final provocative thought. Knowing your inherent magic and the sheer power of our shared ancestral resilience, how will you rewrite the next chapter of our collective liberation? The blueprint is now firmly in your hands to go out and build communities of radical self-love. So how will you ignite this ordinary magic within your own peer groups? Thank you so much for exploring this vital explainer framework with us.